What's up, everybody? We are live. Welcome to the Second Chance Live Show. I'm your host, Daryl Stinson. I am a two-time TEDx speaker, a former Division I athlete, and a suicide survivor. And today we're going to talk to this man of God right here, the man himself. I was reading your bio, and he has a second chance story. He has an athlete transition story. And you guys are going to be blessed and encouraged by that. Y'all know how this works. I'm going to read his bio, and while I read his bio, I want you to be thinking of people who you know who can benefit from his message, his energy, his story, his expertise, and I want you to click the share button. Because when you click the share button, that notifies other people that this is content worth tuning into. So I know some are going to watch the replay. Some of you are going to be in and out. But if you stay with us the entire time, you get the most value. Let's remain present. This is the time to invest in yourself. Remember, the best days are always in front of you and never behind you. So let me go ahead and read his bio. Mr. Stephon Leary has a long tenure of basketball success. Although he says he can beat me one-on-one, we don't know that until we put on them laces. His athletic career started as a high school player at Madison High School in Houston, Texas, and finished at Houston Christian Preparatory, now which is Faith West Academy, where he led the team to a NACA National Championship. He went on to play Division I basketball at Liberty University, which I'm familiar with that. From 1987 to 1992, his college playing career was cut short, sound familiar, due to a knee injury, like my father. Was it ACL?
No, it was one of those early microfracture surgeries, man. If I was born a little bit later, I might have been all right.
Man, that puts you out the micros. Dang, man. See?
Had it in the knee, man. Cracked around the knee.
They didn't have the technology we have now.
No,
so my dad,
I got screws, man. Got some
screws for the See, my dad, ACL twice.
Yeah.
So he got the screws too, man. Yeah. So for the past several years, Coach Leary has dedicated his time to developing players. The Shooting Stars AAU program is one of the top and well-recognized programs in the Greater Houston area because of Coach Leary's commitment to truly making players better through empowerment and teaching. Coach Leary is currently in the process of getting his very own patented training and rehabilitation boot created, which I can't wait to ask more about that. And he has big plans to do more things for the Greater Houston area in the next couple of years. And so, man, y'all join me and welcome. Show him some love in the comments. Say what's up. Get your questions ready. Hit the share button. How you doing, my man? Let them know what wasn't in the bio that you would like to add.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I'd like to add is that life-defining moment. We all have those life-defining moments in our life where our journey in our lives are crossed with people, circumstances, and things that I believe God put in our path to give us an opportunity to pursue our purpose and to reach our destiny. And for me, that path was meeting a coach in a gym, right? I met a coach in the gym that took me to a Hall of Fame basketball player by the name of Pistol Pete Maravich.
Pistol Pete.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. That's my guy, man. That's him in the background, man. That's my guy, bro. He changed my life, man. He told me the worst thing I've heard in my life that became the most significant thing that I was ever heard in my life. And that was, your character matters. I was the MVP of a camp at his camp. As a young man, 17-year-old young man. I grew up in the inner city of Houston, 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, South Park, Sunnyside. In fact, I knew, I crossed paths with George Floyd playing basketball.
Really?
In the city. My mom was a mom who was in an abusive relationship, who ran in the middle of the night with 7 kids from a small town in Bunkie, Louisiana to Houston, Texas. And like you, I heard in your TEDx talk, the first one, Sports changed my life. I fell in love with sports, which allowed for me to escape the city. And that escaping the drugs, the alcohol, the crime, my siblings, I'm the fifth of 7 kids, unfortunately fell prey to those things, got in trouble with drugs and alcohol, dropped out of school. I met a coach in a gym by the name of Dave Stallman. And Dave Stallman invited me to Pistol Pete Maravich's basketball camp. At this camp, I was the best player, and I dominated the week of camp. Unfortunately, I was from the streets, man. And being from the streets, it was dominate at all costs. It was, win or go home. Well, that next line was not next. It was you had to wait all day at the park if you lost. So, that was my mentality growing up, win, win, win at all costs. And I had a little bit of an attitude, man. I played with a little bit of an attitude. And I got to the camp.
Not you, man. You ain't no attitude.
Yeah,
not you.
Man, I know. I think that's why I became a coach, right? I needed to help some other people because somebody helped me, right?
Yeah.
So we get to the end of the camp, and Pistol Pete Maravich asked to have lunch with Stephon Leary one-on-one. Could you imagine what that meant for a kid from the inner city that a Hall of Fame basketball player would say, hey, I want to have lunch with you one-on-one? Unfortunately, what I didn't know was what he was going to tell me at that lunch. And the conversation started out great, Daryl. It started out great. He says, you're a great basketball player. You remind me of my teammate in Boston, Tiny Archibald. You got a lot of talent, and if you keep working hard and if you keep doing the things that you're doing, you can be an NBA player. He said, but I invited you to lunch to tell you this one thing. He said, I give out an MVP award every camp, every year, and I wanted to be able to tell you one-on-one that I won't be giving you that award, even though I think you're the best player here and your team went undefeated. And like any kid sitting in that situation, I'm saying to myself, what do you mean you're not giving me the award? And he says to me, your character doesn't fit the award. Devastating. 17-year-old kid, all you're taught in the city is to do is to fight, to do the things to be the best at whatever you do. And you go to a camp and you do that, and someone tells you it's not good enough. Your character doesn't fit the award. And so while that was the most devastating thing I heard, Daryl, it was the most life-changing thing I could have heard at that time in my life. And that's because Pistol Pete was a man that had an attitude. And he told me the story. By the way, I flipped the table over, man. I flipped the tray over at lunch, man, and I ran out of there. The camp was in Clearwater, Florida. I'm from Houston, Texas. I call myself running out of there like I'm going to run home. And as far as I got is to the curb. And I'm sitting there on this curb and I'm crying. And I'm devastated. I'm brokenhearted over the fact that I came all the way here to prove that I'm the best and I'm not the best. And in that moment, Dave Stallman, the coach who brought me to the camp, he came and sat down beside me on the curb. And he said, Stephon, he said, the reason why I invited you to the camp is because I've watched you every weekend that you come to the gym in Houston, and I've watched your talent. And you have a lot of talent, but I'm afraid if you don't change your attitude, you won't be able to be successful. And he said, what I would like for you to do, I'd like for you to come in and I'd like for you to listen to Pistol Pete's testimony. So I do, okay, whatever, man. It's not like I can walk home, right? I got to do what coach want me to do.
Couldn't
So,
escape.
yeah, no doubt. So I go, and at the closeout ceremony, Pistol Pete tells me, he says, well, he's speaking to everyone. He tells the story of scoring 50-something points in a game and going to a bar. And at this bar, he would go there and brag. And of course, all the ladies wanted to be with the Pistol. You know what I mean? He's the first $1 million player in the NBA. So everybody want to be a part of him, And so, unfortunately, this night, there was a man there who didn't like his brashness, his braggadocious attitude, and called him out and said, I'm sick and tired of you coming into this bar every night that you score all these points and you brag about who you are. He said, why don't you step outside and I'll kick your butt? Pistol Pete being a little, cocky himself and being a little competitive person himself, he stepped outside. Let's go outside.
He said, come with it.
Yeah, let's do it. Unfortunately, what Pistol Pete didn't know was that dude had a gun.
Oh, no.
And Pistol Pete told the story of this man pulled a gun and he put it in his mouth. And he said, I ought to blow your big mouth out. I'm so sick and tired of you coming in here and bragging. And in that moment, Pistol Pete said his life flashed before his eyes.
Wow.
And at the next opportunity that he heard the gospel, he gave his life to Christ.
Wow.
That changed his life.
Wow.
So much so, I heard that story, man, and I'm sitting there as a 17-year-old kid at Pistol Pete Camp in Clearwater, Florida, back in 1986. And Stephon Leary became a Christian.
Wow.
Changed the course of my life forever.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that is powerful. I did not know that about your story.
Yes, sir.
So, I had a similar turnaround experience. Mine was in a psychiatric unit where I found my faith in Christ. And I know that there's this process of changing your friendship circle, not just your behavior patterns.
Absolutely.
What was those early kind of years like for you? Because you obviously, that was a pivotal moment. And here you are, changed on the inside spiritually, but yet still got the same crew you ran with. So how did you go about changing your life from that moment forward?
So God is amazing, man. I tell people, I know that there is a God. I know that there's a God who loves. I know that there's a God who has a purpose and a plan for people's lives, because my life story and my journey could not have possibly happened if there wasn't a God. You see, when I left that camp and I came back to the inner city, 2-bedroom apartment, single mom, 7 siblings, sleeping on the floor. If you want to sleep in a bed, you got to get toes in the mouth. That's what we said. You reverse it. You sleep one way, I sleep the other way. And, and you get enough people's toes and feet in your mouth, you just sleep on the floor or the couch, and you wear the couch out. So I came back, man, and for the first time in my life, my eyes were open. And it was almost instantly that God spoke to me, and I began to see the inner city for the inner city. You see, what I tell young people is, and what I tell people is, when you're growing up in the city, man, the city is fun. I mean, I had so much fun growing up in the inner city. I didn't know I was poor until I got outside of seeing what poor was. So when I got outside of it and I come back to it, I realized I want better for myself. I want to do something with my life. And that same coach, Dave Stallman, reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, I was wondering if you'd be interested in going to a Christian camp, Christian high school." And at that time, I was at Madison High School in Houston, Texas. And we were on top of the world at that time. My sophomore year, we won state championship, went 40-0. So, I was at a really good situation. If you wanted to be the best, be on top, get a college scholarship, I was at the right place. But my life had changed so much that I started to see that there's something more to Stephon Leary's life, that I told him, what's a Christian school? I'd never heard of a Christian school. In the city, we got schools, man. What's a Christian school?
I mean, you just go there and pray. You don't really know.
Yeah. What is that? And he told me, he said, well, why don't you come visit, check it out, and let me know what you think. I went to his house, and he got up for a 5 o'clock in the morning prayer, and he took me to this prayer meeting. And at this prayer meeting, man, God had sent an angel before me. And the angel was in the form of a lady named Lynn Johnson. Lynn Johnson was a white woman who was a part, and her husband was there, Dave Johnson. And they were a part of this praying circle in this church, in this school. And after the prayer, she came up to me and she said, what are you doing here? We haven't had any young men come to our prayer session. I said, I'm with him. I was a little bit intimidated by the fact that she walked up to me. And she said, well, that's strange. She said, while we were praying, God told me to offer you a place to live. I said, me? Live with you? The place where I'm from, a small town in Louisiana called Bunkie, Louisiana, is divided by some tracks. And I grew up in a situation where we were told to stay away from the tracks, especially when the sun go down, because someone might harm you. I grew up where it was a little bit racist and discrimination. And so for this white woman to walk up to me and offer me a place to live out of the blue, she doesn't know who I am, never heard of me, never seen me. I was in awe.
Yeah.
At that moment, I didn't know what to think. I was a brand new Christian. Here I am now and just going to visit this school, and I meet someone who wants me to come live with them. I'm thinking, what in the world is going on?
Oh my gosh.
So I got to tell you, man, this is crazy. I want to blow you away with this, brother. I just wrote my book. They call me Coach. And I learned some things as I wrote that book about my journey that I had suppressed or forgot about as I grew up. And I'm gonna tell you, this is I was just reminded of this. My adopted brother, Jacob, he reminded me of this. This is the craziest thing. On the bus to the camp where I became a Christian, there was a young man on that bus that was Lynn Johnson's son. I didn't even know he was there. Let me take it a step further for you. Pistol Pete decided that he was going to come to Houston and do a camp, and he personally invited Stephon Leary, wanted to see me. I come to the camp and out in Katy area, suburb of Houston, and I'm the best player there at the camp. And I won all of the awards this time. And in winning all of the awards, being the best player at the camp, there were always a group of kids who would come up to me and say, hey, can you dunk? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I would. Little did I know, those kids who were coming up to me were Lynn Johnson's sons.
Wow, really?
Pistol Pete Maravich.
That's crazy.
And his dad stayed while they did the camp at the Johnson's household. And here it is. I meet this woman at a camp, and she invites me to dinner. And I go to the house to see the house and to meet the family. And she opened the door. 3 boys come running up to me. It's him. It's him. It's the guy from camp that we were telling you about. Blew me away. I'm like, oh, what's up? You know, what's that kind of broke the ice for me. But then a life-changing moment for me, bro. There's this blonde-haired little girl. She's about 8 years old. She runs up to me. She jumps in my arms. She surprises me. So I'm like, oh, whoa. Hugs me around my neck, kisses me on the cheek. And she says, I love you. Are you going to be my big brother? Change my whole perspective about the love of God and the love that he pours into people to love others. That family adopted me and took me in, and still today are my family, and they've helped me become the man that I am. I left everything behind me, all my friends, my family. I left everything because God had a purpose in my life.
Wow, very inspirational. You know, you know, as I'm a pastor, and so I don't know if you knew that or not, but
yes, I did. I did my homework on you, brother.
I wholeheartedly, you know, you know, you say you can't take credit for anything, you know, because God just opens doors. But I know there's a stewardship principle, and there's success traits, and I mean that's why you're an author, you're a speaker. That's how you take people from faith and inspiration to actual results and experience in your life. For the people who are listening now and they're like, man, how do I be successful? What would your advice to them be?
So here's what I learned, man, and that's principle that you're talking about is the principle of reciprocity. It's about sowing and reaping. It's about giving and returning. And so for me, God orchestrated my life so much so that I could not miss it if I was paying attention. I went to a camp where I was in a gym where a coach found me. Okay. Let me tell you a short story. When I was being recruited, I used all my visits on Baylor, Arkansas, U of H, A&M. We only got 4 back then. I found myself unsigned, and I go to the All-American camp where we're getting ready to travel and go play overseas. And I meet a coach, and this coach is a coach from Liberty University. And that's how I ended up at Liberty. Pistol Pete Maravich, after that camp, offered to be a mentor to me. So the stewardship of mentorship was poured into me. Coaching was poured into me. Creativity of drills and things was poured into me. This coach offered me a scholarship to go to Liberty. I called Pistol Pete up. I said, hey, if you had to do it all over again, where would you go to school? I'm having a hard time deciding where I would go to school. He told me, he said, if there was a Christian school that was Division I, that gave him the opportunity to learn more about Christ and to be able to use his talents and gifts to honor the Lord, that's where he would go. Sight unseen, I go to Liberty University. Going to Liberty University, I started as a freshman, started as a sophomore, and then I started to hit a little bumpy road where I wasn't starting at my sophomore year. Kind of lost myself there for a second. And that 3rd year, brother, my knee injury. Wouldn't you know, that in that moment, God was still working on Coach Leary's behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I tell people about what we're going through now, Daryl.
Yeah.
COVID wasn't meant to harm you.
Mm-hmm.
COVID was meant to form you, to shape you, to take you through something so that you can be more of what God wants to do to use you. So when I was injured, Coach came up to me and he said this, hey, to earn your scholarship, I want you to show up in the office and serve as a student assistant coach. Student assistant coach, what's that? Well, I want to put you in charge of weightlifting and skill development with the players.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. While I'm rehabbing, I'm participating and being a part of what, development of training and understanding, learning and growing. And it was in those moments I had no idea that God was shaping me for my future.
Right.
So if you go back, rewind this, and as I just said to you, I meet a coach in the gym.
Uh-huh.
I went to Pistol Pete's camp.
Yep.
He taught me about innovation, creativity, training.
Mm-hmm.
And that summer before I went to college, Pistol Pete asked me to be a coach on his staff at his basketball camp.
Mm.
Give me a second.
Yeah. That's it right
me.
there.
That's Pistol Pete in the middle, and that's me.
Look at that.
I served as a camp counselor at his basketball camp the summer before my freshman year.
Huh.
I learned to be a coach.
Yeah.
And so the patterns that God had established in my life was this patterns of becoming something I never even thought I would be.
Right.
I tell people in life that coaching chose me. I didn't choose coaching because it has more to do with purpose than it has to do with dreams.
That's good.
Most people don't dream about the purpose. Most people dream about an achievement,
right?
A crowning moment, a level of accomplishment. God is more about fulfilling the purpose that he created you for, more so than the achievements.
That's
and
good.
That's why you didn't play professional football. That's why I didn't play professional basketball,
right?
Because God was doing something that was far greater than you ever could imagine. So here I am today. What would I tell people about being successful? I would say that you should submit yourself to whatever it is that God has called you to do. Be aware of every opportunity that he puts in your way, because every opportunity leads to another stair step in your life. Maybe not of becoming what you desire to be or what others desire for you to be, but becoming what he desires for you to be. And those opportunities that stack on top of each other elevates you into being what God had created you to be. So for me, I tell people you are more than what you see. You get up every day and you look at your circumstances. You look at your wallet. You look at yourself in the mirror, and you may not like what you see in the mirror, but you are far greater and far more than what you see. Don't get caught up in what you see, because God has something greater for you. You are more than that. You are more than a conqueror. The things that are in your way are simply in your way to help guide you and direct you into fulfilling his purpose for your life. Seize every moment and take every opportunity that God places in front of you to fulfill his purpose, and you'll become successful.
I love it, man. I don't know whether to say amen, high five your chest, bump you. Hey, show them some love in the comments. I see we got people watching. This is our first time streaming to Twitch. And I
Okay.
see there's a couple of people watching there, Facebook. For some reason, when y'all watch on my personal Facebook page and not my brand page, I can't see your comments. So if I look distracted, I'm not. I'm just looking at y'all popping in and out of here. So I see you, Tracy. I see you, Brooke. I see you, Molly. I see you, Allie. I see you, Lynn. So I'm not disconnected now. Um, this has been very inspirational, and your story is powerful. And I know you've given people faith and hope and motivation, even especially during these times when people are going through all types of stuff. They can hear this story, watch this replay, and know that God is working all things out
Hey,
for
there's no
their
doubt
good.
about it. There's no doubt about it. The slogan on my book is "If I can, you can."
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people that if I can be an inner city kid who had no discipline, no foundation for character, no foundation for education, if I can become a teacher, a coach in high school who won many championships, if I can become a college coach who won championships and became a head coach, I served some time in being in the NBA agent business. That's where I discovered my concept of the training and rehabilitation shoe.
Huh.
If I can become an author, if I can become an inventor, if I can become a motivational speaker,
Mm-hmm.
if I can, you can. God has purpose for you in your life. You have to look for those things that God has placed in your life. You remember, the old school movie. He said, "Man, you got so much Jerry curl juice, you just follow the drip." I believe God puts drips in our path, my man. And if we follow
Yeah.
the drip will lead you to God's purpose for your life.
Mm-hmm.
There are drips in your path that we are overstepping
Mm-hmm.
and not paying attention to. You got to get rid of all of the fears and insecurities. I didn't realize until I wrote this book, man, I had to come face to face with the pains of my past.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that, my dad, my biological dad, who was an abusive man, he did something to me that scarred me for the rest of my life, and I just became aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only kid who was playing sports, going to school, getting the education, staying out of trouble. And one summer, every summer, I was playing sports. The one summer I go back to visit, my dad gives every one of my siblings some money except for me. And he told me I don't come see him enough. What that did for Stephon Leary at that time was told me what I was doing was not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurt me and scarred me until a few years ago that I became aware of how much what he said drove me to try and prove to people and prove to myself
Mm-hmm.
that I
Mm-hmm.
was worth something.
Right.
And that thing cost me a lot of what I tell people, broken relationships,
Mm-hmm.
unfulfilled promises and challenges,
Mm-hmm.
because there was something in my life that I wasn't aware of until recently.
Right.
And what I would say to people is you have to be willing to see yourself the way God sees you,
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to deal with those things that are keeping you from reaching your purpose. And I was recently I'm writing a second book. And in this second book, I'm writing something called You Are More Than What You See, a chapter in there.
Oh, I like that.
And the reason why I say you are more than what you see, because God always put roadblocks in front of you, right? So what happened to Moses when he led the people out of Israel? They came to a place where they could not see any further, the Red Sea,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you
Mm-hmm.
get caught up in what you see, you're going to start bickering and murmuring and complaining, because what God wants to take you through, you may not see it.
Right.
What happened when God Joshua was getting ready to cross into the promised land? They came to a place called Jericho, and there were walls in front of them that they could not see.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave them orders to do something in order to be able to step into the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if we get caught up in what we see every day, everything that's on the news, all of the, people are dying because of COVID, the less fortunate, all of the systemic racism and the unfortunate killings. There is a lot of stuff that's going on around us that distracts us and keep us from finding purpose in the pain. And God has purpose for that pain.
That's true.
He don't just stop at the Red Sea. He takes you through the Red Sea. He don't stop you at the wall. He causes walls to fall so you can go through the wall. I mean, God is bigger than these issues and problems that we are facing in our lives, that we cannot allow these things to hold us back from fulfilling our purpose. You are more than what you see. And there's a God that wants to help you see that.
Man, I don't know. I got to call you out on one thing.
Okay.
Your book, you picked the wrong title. You said they call you coach.
Yeah.
They should call you pastor, man.
I've heard that so many times, man. But the only problem with being a pastor is there's a shepherd to flock, brother.
That's true.
And I've been moving around doing so many things. God has gifted me to be able to touch lives of people in so many ways. He hadn't made me sit still yet to shepherd a flock. I've been going to different states and different situations, different schools. I've changed. COVID hits, man. I tell you, this is how I wrote the book. My program that you outlined in the introduction, my Shooting Stars Reaching New Heights program.
Yeah.
One of the largest probably in the state of Texas, maybe even the country. I had 17 teams, select teams. Every one of those players paid me anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to play select ball with me, to train with me. I have a training business. I have a select business. Man, when COVID hit, everything I knew about Stephon Leary was basketball and training. You see, I came to those same crossroads.
Yeah.
I had to see myself for more than what a coach would do. It was in that moment, Daryl, that I shift when COVID hit. And when I shift, I had a friend that came over and told me God he sends me angels in the form of people. I had a friend who said, "Hey, what have you been doing with COVID?" I said, "Man, I've been sitting around here doing nothing, twiddling my thumbs, man." And she said, "My kids, I don't have my kids for the weekend. I'm positive. I'm not. I haven't tested positive. I work. She's a nurse." She said, "If you don't mind, let's hang out." And I was like, "Cool." She comes to my house, man, and she sees my vision board. And she's looking at my vision board, and on my vision board, I have a book that I wanted to write. And when I went to the restroom, she took a pen and started writing on my vision board, which probably isn't a good thing to do. But in this situation, I would forgive her, right? She wrote underneath there, "This book should already be finished. People need to hear your story." And she left. And when she left, I sat down and I picked my vision board up one day. I was like, whoa, she wrote all over it. And here I am, I'm saying, okay, it's time to write this story. And I sit down for the first time at my computer and I'm writing this book. And there's a chapter in my book, it's called Blood Clots. And I'm talking about the blood of Christ. People in life have emotional damage, physical damage, spiritual damage that clots the blood of Christ from flowing through. And I'm sitting there writing this book, and I'm saying to myself, I gotta deal with my own clots. And I had to come face to face with the things that hurt me in my life that kept me from being free and at peace to do the things that God has called me to do in my life. And so it was in that moment, man, I pivot and shift. Put my program on hold. Probably was a couple of $100,000. Probably I just said, okay, Lord, I'm ready to do whatever you want me to do. And I shift into, it's time for me to speak. When George Floyd thing happened, my brother who's white, my adopted brother who's white, he has 2 sons. He called me one morning. He said, hey, if you got some time, your nephews would like to sit down and talk to you. I said, well, what's going on? He said, this George Floyd thing has them a little confused because all they know is Uncle Steph. Uncle Steph loves them. And with all of the race relations and things going on in the world, they were like, what's going on? What's happening? And so for me, it was like my brother saying that to me, my friend saying that to me. It was like, it's time for me to tell my story.
Yeah.
And so I shifted into being a motivational speaker. I wrote the book, and I'm writing another book, and now I'm trying to launch my training and rehabilitation shoot. You have to be willing when God put roadblocks in front of you. He gives you instructions not to sit and pout and complain and wallow in self-pity, not to live in fear and doubt, but to ask him, okay, Lord, how do you want to use me in this situation? If we would learn to start asking how instead of why, we will discover purpose in the adversity that we go through. And I discovered a greater purpose when COVID hit and I had to lay down my basketball program. And the guy that I knew was more than what I ever saw. I never imagined being an inventor. I never imagined being, I saw my English teacher on Facebook, and I said, you wouldn't believe who became an author. And she said, not you. I used to get that paperback with all those red marks on it. Yeah.
Wow.
So the title of my second book is called The Elevated Soul.
Wow.
And the elevated soul, Daryl, this is unique.
Okay.
My training and rehabilitation shoe is an elevated soul, SOLE. And I'm putting it in an acronym of a cross.
Okay.
And I'm going to have SOLE down the middle. And I'm going to have SOUL across the top.
Look at that.
And I'm going to share with people how an elevated SOUL can help you fulfill your purpose and who God's made you to be.
Wow.
I discovered a technique when I was in the training and when I was in the NBA agent business. We had a 7'5" guy named by the name of Musa Kek. I'll never forget. Musa was from Senegal. And my partner told me, he said, hey, we got a kid from Senegal that's coming over. He said, I heard he needs a little work to get ready. The Mavericks want to see him in 2 weeks. What can you do for him? And I said, okay, well, I got some tricks of the trade. Let me have him. We pick him up from the airport, and he's 7'5" for real. I'm like, wow, okay. So I go old school. You remember back in the day, man, you get those ankle weights, right? Everybody wore ankle weights around their ankles, man, because they wanted to feel lighter, quicker, right? I remember on game day in high school, man, we had ankle weights on. Everybody had their ankle weights on. And so I grabbed a pair of ankle weights. And there's this shoe called the jump sole, which was an elevated sole. I grabbed those. I was using them in training. I used them when I coached in college. And then the latest thing that people had was a band, right? And so I took all three elements, and one day I looked at them and I put it on. I said, hey, put these three things on, man. And I put these three things on him, and I looked at it one day and I said, you know what? I said, man, that looks like a boot. There's a picture of it. Whoop. And I said to myself, you know, that looks like a boot, man. I wonder if
I used to train with something like that. Ain't that supposed to get your hops right? Yeah, I had some of them. My dad was mad. He bought them for me. He like, yeah, you should be dunking all types of.
So what I did was I took all three elements and I created what I'm calling the accelerator.
Look at that.
Yeah. And the accelerator is going to be able to accelerate your growth in your process to being more athletic, quicker, faster, stronger. But in this process, I looked at this guy and I said, hey, man, try doing this, try doing this. And I did these different things with him. And he took those things off there. And he said, in his African voice, he said, Coach, what did you do to me? I said, I just put you in these training elements and took you through some drills. I said, what's up? He said, I feel like I can fly. I said, oh, yeah? Well, show me. I threw him the ball. He grabbed the ball and he went, boom. I said, whoa. I didn't think about his dunk at that time, Daryl. I thought, I must be on to something. And I went through a process of discovering and doing research, hired a patent attorney. My dad had a patent attorney. My adopted father had a patent attorney. We did a lot of research and stuff on it and found out that there was, like you used to use the one thing as a component, but there was nothing out there that was made, you know, and congruent with each other, called an elevated sole. So that was 2 years ago, December. I received in the mail from the United States of America Patent and Trademark Office a patent for the acceleration training and rehabilitation shoe.
Awesome.
And again,
so you telling me if I use your shoe, I can go back to the league? That's what you're telling me?
Well, you don't need to eat right, get in shape. I mean, these ain't magic shoes. In my training, we don't just put them on and work. We
come on,
run,
man.
and we got.
It ain't like that Space Jam juice, man.
Exactly, right. So, man, to sit here and be able to tell you that, you know, where God has taken me in my life, from where it all began. I just went back to my hometown in Louisiana and did a book signing there. And I went by the house in which we grew up in. I went by my grandmother's house. And just to know where I came from, I'm asking my mom questions while we're driving to Louisiana and coming back. Mom, what made you run? What made you, what gave you the strength to pile 7 kids up in a car and run to a whole new place? That morning that I woke up, when I went outside for the first time in Houston, Texas, I screamed, ah! And my mom woke up and came running and grabbed me. And she said, get in this house. She said, your dad is looking for you. He wants to kill all of you. All of us. So to know that where I came from, this kid whose mom ran from an abusive husband, an abusive dad, to be able to have accomplished and achieved the things that I have, there's a God, brother.
Mm.
And if you don't know him, you got to get to know him.
Mm.
And if you get to know him, don't doubt in the valley what he promised on the mountaintop.
Mm.
You're going to go through some things. There are going to be some things in your way.
Mm.
All of those things are to shape you and form you into the ministry and the purpose in which God has for you. You got to hang in there. Never lose faith. Never lose hope. Never give up on God. He'll see you through it.
Wow. This has been amazing. If you guys want to connect with Coach, visit the website you see here displayed on the screen, CoachStephonLeary.com. Go buy his book, support his work, buy them shoes, go back to the league.
Yeah.
If you are watching this and you hear this man of God talk about purpose, and you hear him explain this Christian life, and you're like, something in me is calling out for that. I don't know how to begin that relationship. I want to be connected with God in the way that he is. I got good news for you. There's only one thing you have to do, and that is to believe. And if you want to put your faith in Christ, we make that very easy for you. You head over to our website, secondchanceathletes.com. There's a space for you to say, I want to make a faith decision. We'll get on the phone with you, and we'll help you begin that relationship with God. We'll explain what it means to put your faith in Jesus, who paid for your sins and paid a price.
Amen.
So that you do not have to face the consequences of our poor decisions, our bad thoughts. That's good news.
Absolutely.
And so all we have to do is put our faith in him. And so if that's you and you're watching this or you're watching the replay, just reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you and walk you through that, because that is ultimately what life is all about. So thank you. This has been powerful. Guys, we appreciate you.
Awesome, my man.
Make sure you guys go share this. We love you. Show him some love. Buy all of his books, and make sure you let him know he's appreciated. Till next time, remember that your best days are always in front of you, and they are never behind you. Take it easy.
Appreciate you, bro.